Hello and welcome back to the All Out Fighting YouTube channel. My name is Martin Domin. I'm joined for the final time this week by my colleague Rich Jones. We are standing outside the AT&T Stadium in Dallas, Texas. It's the small hours. Been thrown out almost after Mike Tyson and Jake Paul, well, they got in the ring. And I suppose we will have to talk about what happened over those 8 rounds, Rich. But we point out that over our shoulder, emblazoned on the stadium, is indeed the poster for Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano's fight, which, as we expected and hoped, stole the show. More on that in a minute. Jake Paul beat Mike Tyson on points, won every round on 2 cards, all but one on the 3rd.
Still not sure what that card was watching, to be honest. Which round did he give?
Probably maybe the first.
Yeah.
It wasn't horrendous. Actually, the whole fight was horrendous. We talked in the week, Rich. You know, Jake Paul said he would knock Mike Tyson out. Mike Tyson said he would knock Jake Paul out. Jake Paul said he would kill Mike Tyson at one point. And then we thought, yeah, but surely what's going to happen is it'd be really boring for 8 rounds, he'll win on points, and we'll all say, why did we ever invest any time, energy or money in this fight? And hey presto, that's what happens.
Yeah, I think it was pretty much worst case scenario of everything we talked about in the week, wasn't it? We saw early on, like Mike Tyson came out, tried to sort of get on him in the first round, and instantly, as soon as he tried to pin him on the ropes, Jake Paul could just move over the side, get out of the way, which is exactly what we feared might happen. You know, 3rd round, Jake Paul sort of seemed to sort of wobble him a little bit. I don't think he necessarily hurt him. I think Tyson was just unsteady on his feet, which is, you know, a result of his age and stuff like that. And then from that point on, it quickly became apparent that, you know, Jake Paul was almost carrying Mike Tyson through the fight, which was a pretty sad state of affairs. I mean, obviously Mike Tyson, one of the legends of the sport, and he's there not only getting outboxed by a YouTuber, but essentially almost being carried through to the final bell by a YouTuber turned boxer. It was pretty sad to watch, really, wasn't it? But I think it was what we all sort of feared might, and realistically, if we're thinking with our heads, I think we all probably knew this would happen. I think there was that little bit of everyone's heart that was hoping he was going to come and win by knockout, but it just didn't quite happen.
I don't think either of us bought into this. We didn't buy into the idea that Mike Tyson was going to be, you know, reborn as Iron Mike again tonight, or that he was going to be any good whatsoever. But I think what we hoped was that, as you say, Jake Paul would knock him out, or at least stop him, at least do what he should do to a 58-year-old man.
Yeah.
But he admitted in the press conference afterwards he did carry him. He didn't want to hurt Mike Tyson. We should just all be asking ourselves questions why this event was so big.
Yeah.
Netflix crashed. It's made a fortune. It's the biggest gate outside of
the crowd was
Vegas.
enormous as well. Like I said to you,
Yeah.
I think just before the Taylor Serrano fight, which obviously stole the show, that, you know, we've both covered a lot of fights. Usually when you cover a fight, the undercard, there's like nobody in the place, and it sort of fills up right before the main event. And I think tonight, like outside the stadium, I don't know about you, but I was shocked when we were queuing for doors to open at 4 p.m. There were hundreds of fans outside before the doors had even opened, and then obviously that looked fairly empty in the first couple of fights, but even well before Taylor Serrano, the stands were pretty full, and it was packed by the time the main event came around. Yeah, obviously a huge stadium, and there was a real good atmosphere in the air leading up to the main event, and it just, by the end, it just sort of fizzled out. And I think I heard Andre Ward, I think he was on Netflix, just caught a bit of his commentary in the aftermath, and he said it was like the fans are a little bit confused, kind of. They didn't want to boo Mike Tyson because clearly the crowd was mostly for Mike Tyson. I think everyone wanted to see him come and roll back the years, but they also were a bit disappointed by what they saw, and yeah, it was just a complete damp squib, really, wasn't it? It
was. I mean, the crowd made their feelings clear during the fight, but what I loved was that they just left afterwards before the result was even announced. Honestly, hundreds, maybe thousands just left. You know, whether it was to beat the traffic, I don't know. I guess they knew Jake Paul had won and didn't really care. It's deflating, but it shouldn't be deflating because we thought we knew what was going to happen, and it has happened. But I think it's best to leave it at the door.
Yeah.
Move on.
I think the thing that you mentioned there, like Jake Paul kind of said he didn't want to knock out Mike Tyson in his press conference. I think it almost, for me, the whole thing poses quite an interesting question. I mean, we've had so much debate about, is Jake Paul good for boxing? Is Jake Paul not good for boxing? I think this kind of sums it all up in one event. Ultimately, he's got us to this stage. He's built an event that's put on an amazing show with Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano, and incredible fight, not just for women's boxing, but just for boxing in general. One of the best fights anyone will see. Like, that's very much, those two especially have led this thing where we're at the forefront, where people, in that context, people aren't talking about women's boxing, they're just talking about an amazing boxing fight. He's generated this huge event, he's generated an enormous fight for Netflix, but then it's kind of, his fight hasn't lived up to the billing. He's almost shown a bit of I guess you can say it's almost disrespectful that he's fighting Mike Tyson in the first place, but then when it comes to it, he's almost shown respect for him, because he clearly, you know, respects like what Mike Tyson's achieved and everything. Like, I don't know, it's just, I feel like the whole Jake Paul case is a really curious one in terms of, is he good or bad for boxing? Like, it's a really interesting little snapshot of that, I think.
You're right. If you ask Amanda Serrano, she'll say he's amazing for boxing, and he has been incredible for her. And you're right. He's helped a lot of fighters. He's put on events, but sometimes you just want honesty.
Yeah.
And if he'd said, you know what, this is an exhibition with Mike Tyson, we're going to take it easy. I don't know, maybe it wouldn't have gathered as much interest, but I think we all knew really that yes, it was a professional fight, but the rules were such that it was never going to be a proper fight. But then he says himself, well, I just say things.
Yeah.
And the real mugs are the people who buy into it.
I think we said earlier walking around Dallas, don't hate the player, hate the game, and it's very much a case of, you know, it's almost like fall on us for sort of buying into this narrative that there was, you know, going to be a contest. Realistically, like 31-year age gap. I think said earlier, Mike Tyson, when he got beat by Kevin McBride, everyone said he was old and shot and past it, and he's not going to have got any better in 20 years, is he? Like in those 20 years in between, and yeah, I think we saw like kind of what everyone's head told him was going to happen tonight in the end.
Would you say happiest, maybe even the happiest person in Dallas tonight is Eddie Hearn?
I think so. He certainly seemed pretty happy in the ring after the Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano result got announced.
Incredible video, if you haven't seen it, going around social media, of him just fist pumping until the cows come home, really. Katie Taylor unanimous decision victory over Amanda Serrano, which is somewhat ironic given that, you know, the last fight, split decision, very controversial. This fight, even more controversial, but actually all the judges scored it in the same way, including yourself, I believe. Another incredible fight. There is always that worry with rematches, especially with rematches of good fights, that the second one will not live up to the first one, but it did.
Might be even better.
I think you're possibly right. 10 cracking rounds. Serrano cut seemingly, really.
Yeah.
I almost thought the fight was going to get stopped by the doctor.
There was a point, I think it was around 6 or 7, that the doctor had a look at it, and I thought might be the end.
Yeah, she looked devastated enough that I thought she thinks maybe this is going to get stopped. But then she came back stronger.
Well, I think it helped the fight as well, because it's one of those where a fight gets cut and you see they're trying to get the stoppage because they feel like it could be stopped, and then it didn't, and then they just kept that pace up for the rest of the fight. I don't really know what there is to say about it apart from what a fight.
It's just, I think rounds 9 and 10 specifically, they just punched each other as if the other person wasn't there. It was like when you hit a bag. Obviously the bag's not hitting back, but it was just constant. Yeah. It was just like, I don't know what I'm doing now.
There's so much debate about the 2-minute rounds, aren't there? But I think we've seen in both those fights. I mean, I think Amanda Serrano wants 3-minute rounds, doesn't she? It's been discussed, but because the rounds are a little bit shorter, they can just, there's no let up. It's just relentless. It makes for such good entertainment. And yeah, I think the crowd in attendance seems to be pro Serrano. They thought she'd won it. Like I said, I had it 1 round to Taylor, but I think literally every single one of those 10 rounds, you could have scored either way. There was not a single round where I wasn't like, And like, it was just such fine margins. Like, I think round 1 I had Taylor winning, and then Serrano buzzed her at the end of the round. And I think ultimately Serrano was kind of on the front foot. She was putting more pressure on. She was probably throwing more punches, but Taylor was a little bit more efficient. She threw some really nice counter punches. She had some joy early on with that left hook counter punch and stuff like that. Just what a fight.
Incredible. And there was some talk at the end of a third one, and I think Amanda Serrano did say somewhat strangely they'd agreed to have a third fight with 3-minute rounds. But I sort of get the sense Katie Taylor, since the last fight, won and lost against Chantel Cameron, another war. We saw it at the press conference. Her face is a mess, and obviously Amanda Serrano's is not much better. I don't know if there's a better point to just bow out. Yeah.
Also, what do you make of the headbutt? Well, she got a point deducted for a headbutt. Amanda Serrano's camp very, very strongly coming out saying she's dirty, saying there were similar incidents in the Chantel Cameron fight. What did you make of that?
I get the sense that it's instinctive. If your opponent's cut, I'm sure the instinct is to try and open up the cut legally or by punching them. But there must be that instinct to try and just do it by whatever means necessary.
Also, I think Katie Taylor said, didn't she, in the press conference, that it sometimes happens against the southpaw. I mean, obviously she's going to defend her position, but I think, that's the thing. A lot of it for me was just incidental, just the way the fight was going. There was a lot of Amanda Serrano sort of coming forward, trying to hit uppercuts, and Katie Taylor sort of covering up, and obviously naturally ducking head down. And to me, I didn't think there was anything too untoward. But Katie Taylor is someone who likes to fight up close, get in there, and especially in those sort of fights. I mean, I can understand why Amanda Serrano is obviously feeling hard done by, and it was a horrible cut. But yeah, I think the point deducted. The referee was giving a lot of warnings. He was splitting them. He deducted a point. I mean, I don't think there's too much. I don't think there was too much else that warranted any further than that personally. But obviously, I can understand why they feel a bit hard done by.
But it's a good point though, the fact that the point was deducted.
Yeah.
And still, and Katie Taylor did win. You know, I haven't seen the scorecards. I don't know. I'm guessing it wasn't exactly. Well, I have seen the scorecards. I can tell you, it wasn't exactly the same score. But
I can't believe they all got to the same score after a fight like that. Like we said, literally every single round could have been scored differently. And I think it's one of those fights that it's what we see it so often where people scream out like robbery, and I think it's one of those where there's so many of those instances where actually like the rounds are so close that it could have gone either way, and you can disagree with the outcome, but you can't say it's a robbery in any means because it was so close, so hard to score. But I wouldn't have been surprised if there were judges that had it completely wide either way because all the rounds were so close. And I guess it comes down to, like I said earlier, like preferences a little bit. Serrano putting on the pressure, Taylor maybe a little bit more efficient. In that regard, I wouldn't have been surprised if someone had maybe had Taylor winning it by 4 or 5, another having Serrano winning it by 4 or 5. I did think at one point that there was, I don't know, it was just a really tricky one to score. But I think Amanda Serrano would definitely feel hard done by to have lost both of those fights. It's a shame for her, but just an unbelievable win for Katie Taylor again.
Indeed. So what we've seen tonight, really, if you sum it up, is the great of boxing, the best of boxing, and the worst of boxing. But as we stand here in front of Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, let's focus on the good that boxing can bring. That's us from Dallas, Texas, our final dispatch. Stay all over All Out Fighting for all the fallout from Mike Tyson, from Jake Paul, from Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano, and from us too.